You can always spot a smart woman, not just by the way she speaks, not by her degrees, not even by her job title, but by how she carries herself, how she navigates pressure, how she leads with heart and lives with integrity. We live in a world that often tells women to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable. But smart women, truly wise women, know better. They know that playing small never served the world. They follow a set of unshakable rules, not because they're trying to prove anything to anyone, but because they've already proven it to themselves. And today, I want to walk you through 6 of those rules. Rules that smart women never break. Because when we follow them, we don't just change our lives, we change the world. Rule 1, never apologize for having standards. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's a declaration of self-worth. It's a line in the sand, a powerful act of courage in a world that constantly asks us to shrink. Standards are not walls built to keep others out. They are foundations built to support the lives we know we deserve. And smart women, women who walk with purpose, who lead with clarity, know this truth deep in their bones. There's a reason some people feel uncomfortable when you raise the bar. It's because your strength highlights their complacency. Your confidence reveals their doubt. But that discomfort, it's not your burden to carry. Smart women have learned this the hard way. They've walked into boardrooms where their intelligence was underestimated. They've stood in relationships where their needs were labeled as too much. They've shown up to friendships where compromise meant giving until there was nothing left. And still, they rose. Being kind is a strength, but being kind without boundaries, that's self-betrayal dressed up as virtue. Smart women know the difference. They understand that saying no isn't rude, it's revolutionary. That standing up for your worth isn't selfish, it's sacred. And that holding to your standards isn't about being difficult, it's about being deliberate. There's power in choosing what you will and will not accept. There's dignity in drawing the line and saying, this is who I am, this is what I value, and I will not shrink for anyone. Imagine a woman entering a room full of people who don't believe she belongs. She doesn't speak first, she doesn't rush to justify her presence. She observes, she listens, and when she finally does speak, it's with the conviction of someone who knows her voice matters. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's someone who knows her standards are not up for negotiation. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Early in her life, the world tried to define her. Too poor, too black, too emotional, too everything. But Oprah didn't ask for permission to be great. She didn't wait for the world to tell her she was enough. She decided. She refused to edit herself to fit the mold. She redefined the mold. She chose purpose over approval, and that's the essence of living with standards. You choose your truth, even when it costs you comfort. Every time a woman apologizes for her standards, she chips away at her own power. She teaches people that her boundaries are suggestions, not rules, that her needs are optional, that her time is disposable. But smart women don't play that game. They know that standards are a reflection of how we see ourselves. And when you see yourself as worthy of respect, worthy of honesty, worthy of love, you begin to live different. You stop begging. You start choosing. You stop settling. You start rising. Some will call you cold. Others will call you difficult. That's the price of clarity. When you stop over-explaining, people notice. When you stop softening your truth, people read. But smart women have learned that people's discomfort with your boundaries is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your vision, to your voice, to the younger version of you who prayed for the strength you have now. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about waking up and deciding to no longer tolerate what drains you. It's about saying, I deserve better, and meaning it. It's about walking away from what doesn't serve you, not with bitterness, but with peace. Because smart women know that peace is the real power, and peace only comes when your standards match your self-respect. It's not just about knowing your worth, it's about honoring it. And that takes courage, because honoring your worth means walking away from the job that pays well, but treats you like you're replaceable. It means ending the friendship that thrives on gossip but dies in truth. It means letting go of the relationship where you're loved conditionally. When you're quiet, when you're easy, when you're small. That's not love, that's control wrapped in affection. And smart women don't trade their light for someone else's comfort. There will always be someone who wants you to tone it down, take up less space, dim your brilliance, but ask yourself, for what, for who, and at what cost? The world doesn't need more women who are agreeable. It needs more women who are awake, who are bold, who are unapologetic about their standards. Not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because they finally understand they are enough to take up space, enough to be heard, enough to walk away, enough to build a life that reflects their deepest values. Standards are not about judgment, they're about clarity. They are not a weapon, they are a compass. They guide you toward what matters and away from what doesn't. And every time you honor them, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. That's what smart women do. They don't lower the bar to be liked. They don't twist themselves into palatable versions of who they are. They show up fully. They choose alignment over acceptance. They know that being misunderstood is a small price to pay for being in integrity. They aren't afraid to be alone, because they understand that being with themselves is never lonely when their soul is at peace. So when someone says you're too much, smile. That's a sign you're no longer playing small. When they say you're too picky, smile. That means your standards are doing their job. And when they say you've changed, smile. That means you've grown. You've risen. You've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer needs to shrink to survive. You're thriving. Rule 1. Never apologize for having standards, because your standards are not the problem. They are the solution. They are the reason you'll build a life that doesn't just look good but feels right. And when you get there, you'll know. Every no was worth it. Every boundary mattered. And every time you chose yourself, you weren't just surviving. You were leading. Quietly, boldly, powerfully. Imagine walking into a room where every eye scans you. Not to admire, but to measure, to rank, to compare. We've all felt that whisper in the back of our mind that wonders, do I measure up? It's subtle, it's sneaky, but it can be soul-crushing. And yet some people walk into those same rooms and radiate something different, something unshakable. They aren't playing the same game because they've realized something powerful. Rule 2, never compete to where you don't compare. Let that settle in. This rule isn't about giving up. It's about waking up. It's about realizing that when you're spending your energy trying to be like her, or outdo them, or win in a game you were never meant to play, you're abandoning your own lane. You're outsourcing your identity. You're handing over your joy and asking someone else to decide if you're worthy. But here's the truth that smart women already know deep in their bones. Comparison is a trap. It looks like motivation. It masquerades as drive. But really it's a hollow chase. Because even when you win, what have you actually won? Someone else's version of success, someone else's dream, someone else's applause, and none of it will fill you because none of it was built for you. Smart women get that. They don't just hustle harder, they get wise. They redefine the game entirely. They know that the most dangerous place to lose yourself is in someone else's reflection. They stop asking, am I as good as her? And start asking, am I being true to me? That's where the magic happens. Because when you stop comparing, you start creating. You step into your power, not by competing, but by contributing. You realize that success isn't a pie where her slice means less for you. It's an ever-expanding table. And guess what? Smart women pull up chairs for others. They don't guard the crumbs. They bake more cake. And the data backs this up. That Cornell study, it revealed something extraordinary. Women who supported other women were more likely to rise in leadership. That's not just anecdotal, that's science. That's truth. Why? Because when you lift others, you rise too. Not in spite of each other, but because of each other. That's not weakness. That's strategy. That's evolution. Let's be clear, this isn't about playing small. It's not about being passive or shrinking into the background. No, it's the opposite. It's about owning your space so fully, you don't need to compete to prove it. It's about standing so firmly in your purpose that someone else's spotlight doesn't dim yours. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that your path, your pace, your passion, it's not a mistake. It's your mission. Smart women walk into rooms differently. They don't scan for threats. They scan for opportunities. They don't ask, will they like me? They ask, how can I serve? And that shift, it changes. Because when you walk in with something to give, not something to prove, people feel it. It's magnetic, it's disruptive, it's powerful, and it's contagious. Because confidence isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the clearest. Clear on who you are, clear on what you bring, clear on why you're here. And when you're that clear, you don't need to compete. You're already complete. I want you to think about the people who've impacted you the most. The ones who left a mark, not because they were perfect or polished, but because they weren't trying to be better than anyone else. They were being fully themselves, and in doing so they gave you permission to do the same. That's leadership. That's legacy. You see, the world doesn't need more replicas. It doesn't need more noise. It needs resonance. It needs people, especially women, who are bold enough to say, I will not play small to make you comfortable. I will not trade authenticity for approval. It needs women who aren't afraid to clap for others while building their own empire. Women who know that every time they collaborate, they multiply the impact. There's something sacred about a woman who's not trying to compete, because she already knows she's enough. She walks in purpose, she moves with grace, and she shows up not to take space, but to transform it. And that's a kind of power that no title can give you, no trophy can validate, no applause can measure. So let's stop asking, am I doing enough? And start asking, am I being aligned? Because when you are, you'll find that the pressure to compete disappears, and in its place, possibility, peace, power. The women who change the world aren't the ones who fight to be seen. They're the ones who see others. They're the ones who say, I rise, and so do you. They don't wait to be invited. They build tables. They share stories. They hold and that's where real impact lives. So if you've been measuring yourself against someone else, stop. You're not them. You were never supposed to be. Your path isn't late. Your voice isn't too much. Your dream isn't too big. You're exactly where you're meant to be, doing the work only you can do. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's the kind of brilliance that can't be boxed, ranked, or compared. Because the moment you stop competing where you don't compare, you start becoming who you were always meant to be. And the world needs that version of you. There's a quiet battle happening every single day, one you can't always see, but you can feel it. It's in the tired eyes of the woman who stayed late at work again. Not because she wanted to, but because she didn't want to be seen as difficult. It's in the tight smile of the mother who volunteered for another event she didn't have time for. It's in the hurried breath of the friend who said yes to plans, even though all she wanted was one night alone. It's in the soft apologetic voice that says, sure, I'll take care of it, while the weight of unspoken resentment builds silently beneath the surface. We live in a world that celebrates yes, a world that equates agreement with kindness, compliance with cooperation, and self-sacrifice with strength. And for many women, this world has trained them to be agreeable before they ever even learned their own voice. Somewhere along the way, the measure of a good woman became how much she could endure, how much she could hold, how much she could say yes to. And somewhere along the way, they began to believe that saying yes, especially when it cost them, was the price of being loved, of being accepted, of being enough. But here's what the wisest women know now. Every time you say yes out of guilt, you are trading a piece of your peace. Every time you say yes to make someone else comfortable, you are choosing their comfort over your own authenticity. And while it might buy you a moment of praise, a pat on the back, or a temporary sense of belonging, the cost is far greater than it seems. Because when you say yes out of guilt, what you're really doing is saying no to your boundaries, to your needs, to your dreams. Let that sink in. When you agree to something that drains you, you're silently declining the things that would actually give you life. That yes to an extra project. It may be a no to rest. That yes to forgiving someone who hasn't changed. It may be a no to self-respect. That yes to attending every gathering, helping every person, fixing every problem. It may be a no to your own goals, your own healing, your own growth. The women who are thriving, truly thriving, have one thing in common. They've reclaimed the word no, not as a weapon, not as a wall, but as a boundary. As a sacred pause, as a powerful declaration that says, I am allowed to choose myself. These women are not less loving. They are simply no longer willing to abandon themselves for the sake of someone else's comfort. They are not less generous. They are just clear on the difference between giving and being depleted. No is not a rejection. It's an act of protection. Protection of your time, your energy, your purpose. And it takes courage. Because the moment you begin to say no, you will disappoint people. You will no longer be the person who always says yes, who always comes through, who never pushes back. And for a while, that will feel uncomfortable. But there's something more devastating than disappointing others, disappointing yourself over and over again. The truth is, people who truly value you will understand your no. And those who don't, well, they never valued your yes to begin with. The people who get angry when you set boundaries are the ones who benefited from you having none. Saying no doesn't make you difficult, it makes you discerning. It doesn't make you mean, it makes you honest. And it doesn't make you selfish. It makes you responsible for your own well-being, for your own happiness, for your own life. And that responsibility is not something to fear. It's something to honor. You see, the world doesn't need more women who are exhausted, overextended, and quietly resentful. It needs women who are alive, women who are clear, women who are so deeply rooted in their self-worth that they no longer feel the need to apologize for having needs, for having limits, for saying, this matters to me. This isn't about becoming rigid. It's about becoming real. It's about choosing alignment over approval. And yes, that's hard, especially when you've been raised to believe that being liked is the ultimate currency. But the cost of always being liked is that you'll rarely be known, and being known, truly known for who you are, for what you believe, for where your lines are drawn. That's the kind of belonging that actually lasts. So when the guilt creeps in, as it will, and you start to feel the pull to say yes, even when every part of you is screaming no, pause, breathe. Remember that you are not responsible for other people's reactions to your boundaries. You are only responsible for honoring the truth within you. You don't owe anyone a yes that comes at the expense of your peace. You don't have to explain or defend a no that protects your energy. You are not here to make everyone else comfortable while slowly disappearing in the process. You are here to live fully, love deeply, and lead boldly. And that starts with learning to say no, not because you're cruel, but because you care about your purpose, about your path, about your potential. So let the guilt go, let the approval go, let the endless people-pleasing go. And in its place, pick up your power, pick up your peace, pick up the quiet revolutionary act of saying no, not out of anger, but out of love. Love for the woman you are, love for the woman you're becoming. Because the most successful, most fulfilled, most radiant women you'll ever read didn't get there by saying yes to everything. They got there by choosing what matters most and protecting it with everything they've got. And that is the kind of yes that changes everything. Fear has a voice, and it speaks with conviction. It doesn't whisper, it roars. It tells us we're not enough. It insists we don't belong. It questions our worth, our ability, our very place in the room. It reminds us of every stumble we've made, every time we hesitated, every moment we felt exposed. It's a voice we all know too well, but it's also a voice that lies. Fear will never wait until we feel ready, because fear doesn't care about readiness. It only cares about control. It wants to paralyze us with doubt and trap us in cycles of hesitation. And the truth is, we don't overcome fear by waiting for it to go away. We overcome it by moving forward with it, whispering in our ear. The real act of bravery is not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of it. When you hear its message loud and clear and still choose to step forward. It takes something deeper to do that. Something that lives below the surface of fear. Belief. Not the kind of belief that everything will be perfect. Not the kind of belief that success is guaranteed, but belief in ourselves. Belief that we are worthy of the seat, the stage, the spotlight, even if we're shaking when we take it. Let me tell you something about how fear operates. It shows up strongest in the moments that matter most. When we are closest to growth, when opportunity is within reach, when the next step could lead to transformation, that's when fear fights the hardest. That's not a coincidence, it's a sign. Fear doesn't come to block the wrong path. It shows up to test whether we're ready to take the right one. In 2016, that internal study at Hewlett-Packard revealed something that should stop us in our tracks. Men apply for a job when they meet just 60% of the qualifications, but women, capable, brilliant, talented women, hold themselves back until they meet every single one. That's not a reflection of competence. That's a reflection of conditioning. We have been taught, whether directly or indirectly, to play it safe, to be sure, to wait our turn, to be qualified enough. But what is enough, really? Who gets to decide? Here's the truth. Smart women break that pattern, not because they never feel fear, not because they are immune to self-doubt, but because they understand something fundamental. Waiting for perfection is a luxury we can't afford. The world doesn't change by those who wait until they're ready. It changes by those who act before they feel ready and grow as they go. Raise your hand before you have the answer. Take the mic before you have the perfect words. Launch the business before you have the perfect plan. Say yes before your inner critic catches up to say no. That's what courage looks like in real life. It's messy, it's uncertain, but it's real, and it's powerful. When we let fear lead, we shrink ourselves. We become small to make others comfortable. We silence our voice so others can be heard. We second guess when we should trust our instinct. And slowly, almost without noticing, we become strangers to our own potential. But when we stop letting fear lead the way, something beautiful happens. We reclaim our power. We give ourselves permission to take up space, to make mistakes, to learn publicly, and to evolve loud. We become examples not of perfection, but of progress. And in doing so, we give others around us the courage to do the same. We have to remember, every time we take a step forward, even a small one, we're rewriting the rules. We're reshaping the narrative for those watching, for the next generation, who will look to us not for answers, but for evidence that it's possible, that you don't need to wait until you're ready, that you can show up now as you are. Fear will always have something to say, but we don't have to listen. We can hear it without obeying. We can acknowledge it without surrendering to it. We can let it walk beside us, without ever handing it the wheel. If you're waiting for the fear to fade, you might be waiting forever. But if you're ready to grow, to lead, to speak, to try, Do it with fear in the passenger seat. Because the greatest transformations begin not when fear is gone, but when you decide it no longer gets to be in charge. The job you're dreaming of, apply. The idea that won't leave you alone, start it. The conversation you've been dreading, have it. The leap that feels too big, jump. You don't need to be fearless to be powerful. You just need to be bold enough to believe that your purpose is bigger than your fear. Smart women know this. They feel the nerves, the doubt, the pounding heart, and they still raise their hands. They still take them up. They still walk into the room and say, I belong here. That's not ego. That's alignment. That's honoring your gift, your voice, your calling. So the next time fear shows up, and it will, don't let it lead. Let it be there. Let it ride along, but you move forward anyway. Because courage isn't about waiting until you're fearless. It's about choosing to show up because something else matters more. And when you know what that something is, when you believe in it with your whole heart, fear doesn't stand it. Imagine walking into a room where your light is so bright it naturally draws attention, not out of arrogance, not out of pride, but because you've done the work. You've trained, you've prepared, you've fallen and gotten back up more times than anyone will ever know. And in that moment when your light is blazing at full power, someone tells you to dim it, to shrink a little, to quiet down, to make room for others, as if your brilliance takes up too much space. But let's ask the real question. Who decided that shining brightly was something to apologize for? Who decided that in order to be accepted, especially as a woman, you must fold your wings so someone else can fly? We've been fed a story that success should be gentle, that strength should be graceful, that being too good, too confident, too dominant is somehow threatening, and that, right there, is the lie. Smart women don't fall for that lie. They know that their light isn't a threat, it's a beacon. It's a signal to others that it's safe to rise, that it's possible to excel, that power and kindness can coexist. They know that playing small serves no one. It doesn't lift others. It doesn't empower them. In fact, the act of shrinking can create a culture where no one wins because everyone's waiting for someone else to lead the way. We live in a world that has long told women to apologize for their presence, to soften their words, to downplay their achievements, to smile a little more, to take up less space. And yet, every time a woman chooses to ignore those rules and instead step fully into her power, something incredible happens. A ripple, a shift, a crack in the old structure. Take Serena Williams, a woman who defied expectations not just once, but repeatedly. She didn't just break records, she redefined what dominance looks like. But instead of being universally celebrated, she was criticized, not because she failed, but because she succeeded too much. She was too loud, too strong, too confident, too unapologetically excellent. But she didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. She didn't say, maybe I should tone it down. She kept showing up, day after day, match after match, with fire, with focus, with undeniable talent, because she understood something profound. When you shine, you give others permission to do the same. The world doesn't need more people playing small. It doesn't need more dimmed lights. What it needs, what it desperately craves, are leaders who are willing to be seen. People who refuse to bury their brilliance to make others more comfortable. Because comfort never created change. Comfort never built movements. And comfort never broke ceilings. Let's think about that in our own lives. How often do we catch ourselves making our success sound accidental? I just got lucky. It wasn't a big deal. Anyone could have done it. That instinct isn't humility, it's conditioning. It's the quiet voice we were taught to listen to that says, don't be too much. But the truth is, being too much is exactly what the world needs. Too bold, too brilliant, too passionate, too ambitious. That's the energy that shifts paradigms. There's a reason the stars don't apologize for how brightly they shine. They don't pause to ask, am I blinding someone? They simply shine, because in doing so, they guide others. That's what light does. It leads. And when you give yourself the freedom to shine, you unconsciously liberate others. You let them know it's okay to want more, to go after it, to be unrelenting in their pursuit of excellence. We have to unlearn the belief that success is a limited resource, that someone else's win somehow diminishes our own, or that in order for someone to rise, another must fall. That's not how light works. If I light your candle with mine, my flame doesn't get smaller. In fact, the room gets bright. That's the real power of living without fear of our own greatness. So what if we stopped waiting for permission? What if we stopped tiptoeing around our potential? What if we lived like we knew deep in our bones that our gifts were meant to be used fully, not cautious. Imagine a world where women weren't taught to dim their light, but encouraged to turn it all the way up. Because every time one woman steps into her power without apology, she becomes a mirror, a reflection of what's possible. She sends a message that says, this is allowed, this is welcome, this is safe. And maybe, just maybe, another woman watching will decide that she no longer has to whisper either. Courage is contagious, and light multiplies. So here's the real rule: never dim your light. Not for the comfort of others, not to fit in, not to make someone else feel bigger. Because the truth is, when you shine, you make it easier for others to shine too. When you rise, you raise the ceiling for everyone else. And when you own your power, you rewrite the rules for what's possible. Let the world adjust to your brilliance, not the other way around. We are wired for connection. Every human being, deep down, craves that powerful sense of belonging, the feeling of being seen, accepted, and valued just as they are. It's not about being in the same room or sitting at the same table. It's about being there without shrinking, without editing, without negotiating our identity in exchange for approval. But here's where the tension lives: in the pursuit of belonging, many of us have been taught to mold ourselves to match the room instead of daring to bring the room to meet us. For too long, smart, capable women have walked into boardrooms and classrooms, into meetings and interviews, with a quiet internal question: how much of me is too much? This is not just about dress codes or tone of voice. It's about a subtle conditioning that whispers, you will be more accepted if you just adjust your tone, adjust your opinions, adjust your ambition, adjust your instinct. The problem isn't that women aren't capable, it's that they've been told to camouflage their full capacity in order to make others comfortable. But smart women are rewriting that narrative. They understand something foundational: true belonging can never require betrayal. You cannot betray your voice, your values, your instincts, and still call it connection. That's not belonging. That's bargaining. That's negotiating away the very parts of yourself that make you powerful, and hoping the scraps are still enough for someone to accept. But smart women don't make that deal. They know the cost is too high. Because once you start betraying who you are to be liked, to be included, to be promoted, you will never know if you are loved for who you truly are, or for the version of you they prefer. It's a hollow victory to sit at the table if you had to leave yourself at the door to earn the seat. In a survey conducted by McKinsey, 45% of women said they felt they had to act more like men to be taken seriously in leadership. Let's sit with that. Almost half of the women felt pressure to dim their natural strengths, to replace empathy with assertiveness, to quiet their intuition, to lead with bravado rather than connection. But here's what smart women know: this isn't leadership, it's performance. And a performance, always. Real leadership doesn't come from imitation, it comes from integration. Smart women don't suppress their natural empathy to lead, they lean into it. They don't silence their intuition, they amplify. They don't put on a mask of toughness and call it strength. They lead from their core with clarity, with courage, with compassion. They understand that leadership is not one size fits all, and that the old model, the one that says you have to act like someone else to be credible, is outdated and broken. The future belongs to those who are unafraid to lead from who they are, not who they think they have to be. And yes, there will be rooms that don't know what to do with that. There will be systems that try to push back, to label confidence as arrogance, decisiveness as aggression, emotion as weakness. But that's exactly why this courage matters so much. Because every time a woman chooses to bring her full self to a room instead of shrinking to fit it, she makes space for someone else to do the same. Every time a woman speaks up without softening her truth to protect egos, she chips away at the old mold and makes space for a new kind of power, one that doesn't rely on mimicry but on meaning. You see, smart women don't just want to succeed, they want to succeed on their own terms. They don't want a seat at the table if it means cutting off pieces of themselves to sit there. They want the kind of seat that doesn't ask them to apologize for their boldness, their softness, their fire, or their intuition. Because when you succeed by pretending, you never actually win. You just play a game that was never built with you in mind, and worse, you reinforce the rules for the next generation. But when you lead from wholeness, when you choose integrity over inclusion, you don't just show others who you are, you remind them who they are. That's the kind of influence that doesn't fade when the meeting ends or the spotlight shifts. That's the kind of impact that echoes. There's a particular kind of courage it takes to walk away from places where you're only conditionally accepted. To say, if I can't bring all of me, then this space is not for me. That's not giving up. That's choosing self-respect over self-erasure. That's not weakness, that's strength in its most refined form. And it's not just a personal decision, it's a statement that tells the world that value is not determined by conformity, but by authenticity. That you won't dilute your worth for the comfort of others. Because the truth is, we do not need more women who fit the mold, we need more women who break it. We need more women who trust that their instincts are not liabilities, but leadership assets. We need more women who walk into rooms and don't ask, how do I fit in here, but declare, here is what I bring. Because when you show up like that, you give others permission to do the same. There's something magnetic about someone who is unapologetically themselves. We're drawn to it not because it's flashy, but because it's real. Because it speaks to a part of us that's tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of trying to belong in ways that demand our silence or our compliance. That kind of belonging, the one that requires betrayal, is no belonging at all. It's an illusion. And illusions always crumble, but truth endures, identity endures, character endures. So when we say never betray yourself to belong, we're not just offering advice, we're making a declaration that we will not trade authenticity for acceptance, that we will not shrink to be seen, that we will not compromise who we are to be invited in. Because the room's worth being in, the people worth knowing, the future's worth building. They will not ask you to leave yourself behind. They will rise to meet you as you are. And that is the kind of belonging that changes everything. Closing, emotional rise and call to action. Smart women are not perfect. They're not invincible, but they're powerful, because they choose truth over comfort, purpose over fear, and integrity over approval. These 6 rules are not just guidelines. They are guardrails for a life that's not just successful, but deeply meaningful. And here's the secret no one tells you. Every smart woman you admire didn't wake up that way. She became her one brave rule at a time. So to every woman listening, ask yourself, which of these rules do you need to start honoring today? Because the world doesn't just need more successful women, it needs more whole women, more wise women, more